All right. Hello. And we are live on YouTube right now, and we're doing Men's Health Monday. And today we're doing another reaction style video, and we're going to be reacting to Michaela Peterson and Cosmic Skeptic as he goes by. I think his original name is Alex something, but either way, Alex O'Connell. But, anyways, Cosmic Skeptic and Michaela Peterson recently had a podcast where they talked about veganism, and that was the main point of the topic. And it was the first time that I had seen her have like a really long form debate about this. And if you don't know too much about Michaela Peterson, something about her is that she's widely known beyond her father being Jordan Peterson, and she's known for that and her own efforts that she's done it within YouTube and the way that she helps women and all the different things that she does. But beyond that, what she's known for is she reversed a lot of childhood health issues and symptoms by going carnivore and doing the carnivore diet. And she talks a lot about it, and she's widely known for that. And it's something like only beef, and then she got her dad to do it, and he had some health improvements, right? And so now she talks about that being the way, and that being need to be studied, and that being almost the way that we need to go. So now she's down this kind of rabbit hole, so to speak, of like diving into other alternatives, because the reality is, and especially for me and what I know and what you know, is with autoimmune disease as the one of the things that she had, is you don't have to eat animals in order for it to be reversed. You know what I mean? And I think that that's where she is unsure of, because her experience is different, right? And then the topic of the actual podcast was ethical veganism, which is what Cosmic Skeptic focuses on and what he specializes on. And when we talk about his health, right? So it's it's a little bit different. So really quick, just quick brief explanation. Veganism, right, isn't a diet. It's a moral philosophy on not harming animals as far as possible and practical, right? And so she talks about vegan diet as this diet, right? But plant-based diet is a thing, and there is a lot of studies on that, and there's a lot of information on plant-based diet, and there is a lot of information on plant-based eating, and that's been around for a long time. Maybe vegan is a new term, and that's okay, right? But plant-based eating and plant-based beliefs, or even the belief of not harming others, has been around for a long ass time, and we'll talk about that. So let's get into the clip really quick so you guys know what we're talking about. We're going to play the clip one time through, and then we're gonna break it down and kind of almost debunk some of the stuff that's being said, because I think it can be harmful for some. All right, so let's go ahead and break this down. I'm going to share my screen right here and play the video.
Wouldn't the right way to encourage people to stop eating factory farm to give them alternatives rather than saying just stop?
So to answer your question, you said, well, isn't like sure, like advocating for veganism is great and all to stop factory farming, but it wouldn't actually just be more effective to advocate for regenerative agriculture or something?
It wouldn't just be more effective, it would also mitigate the risk that long-term veganism isn't healthy for people. We could potentially be pushing a diet that's going to increase chronic disease. And at least I
Mm.
think we need more studies to prove that it doesn't. Wouldn't the right way to
All right, perfect. So that's the clip. And something that really jumps out at mind that we didn't talk about this when we were talking about this prior, that just always rings in my mind, is so funny when someone talks about the right way to advocate for veganism, or the most effective way to advocate for veganism, or wouldn't this be more effective if you did this instead of this? It only comes from people that have never done it. They have never walked in your shoes. They've never lived that life. They've never practiced it. And it always strikes me as odd as someone like trying to change, it's just like, I don't know, it's like telling someone that's a mechanic, you know what I mean, that's like an expert, and they're just like, they've been doing this for years and they have it fine-tuned, with what they're doing. And you go to tell them, well, wouldn't it be better if you fix the car like this and this, and you check this sensor and you change that? I think it'd be more effective. You know what I mean? Be like, excuse me, like, hold up, this is what I do. Like, this is what I do, but that always sticks out to me. But okay, let's break it down. Is there anything that you want to add before we jump into this, and before we maybe break it down a little bit slower, piece by piece?
Yeah, I mean, so just briefly on Michaela Peterson, right? And her diet. So she's calling it the lion diet, right? Because a lot of people use the term carnivore, right? But just to make it, I know you already said this, but to make it abundantly clear for anybody listening to this, that means literally eating only beef, no spices, no side dishes, nothing. Literally just beef. So the diet is pretty extreme on its own.
Really quick, why lion diet if you're eating cow? What? How many lions don't eat cows? Like what?
That's what she calls it, and that's, I think that's just indicative of our like disconnect from nature yet again, right? And the whole, well, lions eat meat and so I need to. And it's like, well, a lion will chase down and eat a living animal and tear it to shreds. That's not what we're doing. But okay. But so just to make that abundantly clear, that's the diet she's talking about. And so really, before we delve into anything else, what she did was she essentially did like a hardcore or a heavy elimination diet, right? And she eliminated everything except one food, and she was or is in a position where she can afford to buy, like organic grass-fed beef. So she's eliminating, a lot of potential triggers that would be causing.
Really quick, you could do the same thing that she's doing, like an elimination in a single diet with potato diet. They've done it before and people have done it, and you could do it, and you could have similar results as what she's had on just a potato diet. You know what I mean? Wouldn't recommend that to anyone. Is incredibly challenging and hard and difficult, and a high chance of not getting what you need. But it's near complete if you eat enough. And so it's a wild thing, but that's one thing really quick I want to say is if you have the option, you know what I mean? And you're saying, well, I want to reverse my autoimmune disease, and one option is harm animals and one isn't. There is one that isn't harm animals, and you could find that one, you know what I mean? And that's all that it is. It doesn't mean that you have to, right? And that's where the thing is, where she gets into is like, no, this is the only way to do this. And Alex is kind of like, well, he's never experienced that and never seen someone that has reversed it on plants, you know what I mean? So he can't really speak to experience on that. But anyway, or go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said what I was trying to say there, which is that an elimination diet, removing potential triggers, is very likely, especially if you eliminate, that many potential triggers, as long as the one food you're keeping is not a trigger, which is the goal of elimination diets. You could then credit the results to that. But that's sort of like, it's raining outside and you and I sit down on the couch and say, all right, we're going to do a rain chant. And then once we do it, it stops raining. We attribute that to the raining, the rain stopping. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. You can't, it's a cause and relation. It's a cause and reaction relationship there. And she's, I think she's short-sighted in attributing all these results to eating the meat as opposed to eliminating all these other foods. And then the fact that she's not able to eat anything else while she's on this diet means she has not reversed or stopped the condition. All she's done is avoid triggering that condition. So that's, to speak from a place of authority and as if you have solved the problem and understand it, or that you've reached a solution that other people need to be analyzing, I think is inaccurate, because she has not reached a solution. She has just not triggered her immune system lately.
And people fast all the time, you know what I mean? And they have incredible healing benefits just as well. When an animal's sick in the wild, like she was sick, like she had debilitating like hip issues and like couldn't walk and like crazy arthritis and hip replacements and stuff. And animals sick in the wild, they don't eat nothing. They fast, for a reason. And I think that same idea, like eliminating everything, would have been also, a solution. There's plenty of statistics you could see and studies on people fasting and the benefits of that too, right? Okay, so are you ready to break down? Let's go into like clip by clip on this one and break it down a couple of things that we discussed through. All right, so I'll just share one more. I'll share it again, the beginning part.
Wouldn't the right way to encourage people to stop eating factory farm to give them alternatives rather than saying just stop?
So to answer,
Okay, let's start there. So she's saying, wouldn't it be, better to give people alternatives to factory farming, right? And then just telling them to stop, like eating animals in general. Like, hey, you know what? You're gonna eat animals, why don't you do this alternative, of animals versus factory farming, right? And so for that, what I would say to that is, you know, the issue isn't really there's a huge issue with factory farming. 100% factory farming's got to go, and it's very, very apparent that most people realize that. But the challenge is the amount of animal products that people eat today, the amount of meat that we're consuming around the world. Factory farms are what are necessary to keep up with that demand, right? So that demand is so high, right? So if you were to take the same demand, right, and you're like, okay, you know what? Let's get rid of all this factory farming. We're going to be done, but we're going to keep up the same demand of animals, right? Well, they're stacked in time. Like even a chicken, for example, right? Millions and millions like of chickens are killed per year. Like 7 million baby male chicks are killed per year, but they live on the size of a little paper, right? The size of like a paper that you would print on, right? Is the average space that they have in a factory farm. Now, let's say you take that out, forget the factory farms. Now they're free range, they're open, they're out in the field, they have all the space, they have everything they need, right? You do the same thing to the cows, the same thing to the pigs, the same thing to all the animals that you're eating. There is not enough land, not enough space to do. And you're talking about regenerative farming that she talks about in the video. The thing with regenerative farming that they talk about, what they do in regenerative farming is they take the farmland and then they have the animals on another part of the farmland, right? And they're growing the crops, right? And then they rotate the crops. So now the animals are where the plants were, and then the plants were where the animals were, and they do this rotation. So you need almost double the space to do that type of regenerative farming, right? So now we're talking about not only enough. The reason why factory farming is so intense is because there isn't enough space, right? Almost all of one, like I think it's like 1/3 of the entire land space is already taken up just for animal farming. Just the land space that we have available, right? You would need something like 4 planet Earths just to have the amount of resources and room to have all the animals that we eat. So it just isn't viably possible. So when you're saying let's go to this alternative, that maybe it's better for the animals, and I think it's not. I think that's totally completely debatable that it's better for the animals. The animals in factory farms are suffering. They're in terrible conditions, and when they're killed, it's almost like they're put out of their misery. On a nice, quote unquote, nice, happy farm where they're free range and they trust you, maybe, and you're treating them nice or whatever, and then you kill them, it's a total betrayal, right? And so I think that that's worse. It'd be worse to take the life of a happy, loving dog that's in the prime of their life than it would be a sick dog that's been suffering and has diseases, right? Now both are terrible, so that's why the answer is stop both, not let's do an alternative that's maybe actually worse, than some of these things. When they look at the environmental impacts, they don't look at land space and land use, right? And additional pollution, additional food, and additional lifespan. They don't look at all these things. Maybe they say less greenhouse gases, or greenhouse gases are sequestered, as if that's the only issue for the impacts the environment from animal agriculture. That's a part of the issue, right? So anyways, what would you say to that beginning piece as far as like these alternatives to factory farming?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, to specifically address like the land usage thing, which I think a lot of people are aware of how much land is required to feed animals, but if they're not, you make an excellent point, and I think people need to be aware of that. But so for Michaela Peterson in the full talk, right, she brings up with Alex, she says, there's this lady named Diana Rogers who she claims, she's written some books and documentation on regenerative farming. She claims that at our current pace, she'd be able to, we would be able to practice regenerative farming and still eat, as many animals and all that stuff. So that's where Michaela's getting it from. I haven't read the book. Everything I've everything I've read and seen lines up with what you said, which is that it's not actually sustainable, and the ecological footprint would be too large. But for some reason, she's got it in her head, that it is possibly sustainable, and I guess we have to vet this Diana Rogers character and see what math she's using to break that down, because it does not appear to be possible. But
right now, with the space right now, and as this moment, they have to cut down protected areas right now, rainforest areas that they say, and they really don't want to, but they just feel like they have to, based on the demand. And there's any solution to not factory farm is only increase, and it's just more space. It just doesn't seem to add up unless you start taking away national parks, you start taking away where people's homes are, or you start taking down freeways. I don't know. I mean, and unless it doesn't make sense. We're already out of space, as it is right now.
I agree. Yeah, for sure. So that's one issue, right? And I think we obviously are in disagreement with her opinion on the sustainability of that. But even more so, the phrasing, or like the stance that she takes, right, or has on this issue, is that so for factory farming to be reduced, we should have some type of alternative to meat. And right away there, what sort of catches my interest, having been vegan for so long, is like, well, hang on a second. Let's look at our species and let's determine whether or not meat is an actual food for us. And it shows you how our education system has failed so immensely in the fact that people talk about and assume that meat, animal flesh, is not just a necessity, but even if they don't think it's a necessity, they think it has something in it that nothing else does, right? Or they're thinking it's like, often it gets lumped in as like protein, right? And it's like, but people don't even understand what protein is. They don't understand why we need to consume amino acids and form polypeptide chains and produce and build our own proteins. And the more complex of a protein you consume, the harder it is for your body to break it down, right? So, that right away there's a problem. There's a fallacy sort of in her approach of assuming.
Also, one thing too is there are alternatives already.
And that was going to be my
at this very moment. Like, what do you mean alternatives to factory farming? We have a bunch. There's thousands and thousands of foods you could eat.
Well, and we have so many like processed ones, right? Which she would probably, especially with her autoimmune disease, she'll probably say like, you don't want to have like a Gardine's processed chicken finger, right? Okay, cool. But yeah, there are lots of alternatives, and they range from highly processed, like what I just mentioned, to not so processed, like tempeh, right? Which is quite good for you and is a protein source. But yeah, that really highlights, the more that someone actually starts to analyze what we should be eating, it's right away you start to discover, okay, so alternative is sort of a loose term, right? Because there's like
spinach is an alternative to factory farming.
Exactly. There's tens of thousands of things for people to eat.
It doesn't taste like a burger, but that's an alternative. That's better. If I have two choices, I still choose that one over all this death and destruction.
Blue-green algae like spirulina is 50% protein by weight, right? Lentils, legumes, like the beans and everything in that category, extremely high in protein, varying amino acids, not just protein. Great source of fiber, great source of a lot of stuff. So yeah, the terminology, like, it's very tricky because, as you said, she's got a following, right? And she has people sort of guided or listening to what she's saying, and to come out of the gate right away with this posture of this is what's right and we need alternatives for what is necessary. It's like, well, pump on the brakes, because A, is it necessary? B, don't we have alternatives already? So just making some claims that are it's very easy to sweep people up, right, into your emotion when you word stuff that way and you have that level of confidence. People respond to confidence and they don't question stuff if someone's really confident. But yeah, as soon as you start to actually stop and say, okay, wait, let's take a look at what she's saying. It's like, where's this
It's
assured posture coming from?
yeah, it's like almost like taking the situation and making it black and white, like only two alternatives. It's like either the if you're gonna eat food, it's either you eat the factory farmed or you have the regenerative farming, like, and that's it, like no in between and
And the
nothing else.
regenerative farming has to have animals being eaten.
Yeah, right. All right, so let's go into that. So let's replay that part of the clip and then we'll discuss that, because I think that's the next part that she talks about.
Your question, you said, well, isn't like, sure, like advocating for veganism is great and all to stop factory farming, but it wouldn't actually just be more effective to advocate for regenerative agriculture or something?
It wouldn't just be more effective. It would also mitigate the risk that long-term veganism isn't healthy for people.
All right, that's what we need to talk about right there. So the regenerative farming claim, right? And then the long-term chronic health issue claim. So if you want to go first.
Yeah, right away, I want to get this like clear and off the table, right, and out in the open. Regenerative farming is the way, and I'm not going to argue against that, and I don't think you're going to argue against that. We both support regenerative farming. We both work with a company that does regenerative farming. We both love the concept. So absolutely, we are not arguing against that. But with her, with the way that Michaela Peterson, at least in this instance, right, in this particular discussion, the way that she is, or what she's attributing to regenerative farming includes animal agriculture. And so that's the part of it that we're specifically not in agreement with in terms of practices, right? In terms of it being beneficial and of course ethical in the long run. So yes, regenerative farming, of course, that's absolutely the way, but not in the context that she perhaps is viewing it. And then just the way that again, posture or phrasing, the way that she discusses or brings up her point of, how does she say it? She says something along the lines of like, in order to mitigate the risk of long-term veganism, not the potential risk. She doesn't say that. There's no doubt in her mind. It's concrete, the risk of being vegan to your health long term. And that's curious, right? Again, you're sweeping people up in this energy and in these assumptions without properly bringing to light how you have arrived at these conclusions. Because I think I'm quite healthy. I get blood work done. I get tests done. I do my physicals. I just played a game of hockey. I play hockey routinely, which is a pretty intense sport. So I feel like I'd know if like my energy levels were off, or there was something else wrong. So I don't know where this long-term health impact for vegans is coming from, unless we're talking about long-term health impacts that, again, drawing conclusions improperly and saying, oh, well, they were vegan and they got sick. Well, then it was veganism that made them sick. No. Let's back up and connect the dots. Because just like how she eating all beef did not cure her illnesses, it's just not triggering her immune response, right? Like those are very different things.
Yeah, so there's a few things I want to say on the regenerative farming part. So first of all, when it comes to actual like growing food or growing vegetation or growing plants or trees or any kind of growth, when it comes to soil and just quality of soil, I always say, look at the rainforest, and the reason why is because it is so dense and so thick, and it's like the most diverse, like life, like in such a small amount of space, like within 1 acre or something like that. There's so much life, within the acre, from the plant life to even the animal life and the insects and, all the different layers. And I lived in the jungle for about a year, in that type of climate, in that type of environment, and just seeing the way things grow and seeing the way soil, you do not need. That's one thing I've seen, right? I've also done organic gardening, veganic gardening as well, like in San Diego for people's homes, right? And I've seen, what's in the regular soil, that they sell at the stores versus the veganic soil, and, the ingredients. And, there's a big challenge that we have. One thing is there's a huge monopoly and almost like takeover of the agriculture system when it comes to even just the control of the seeds. And you look at having the control of the seeds and the way they get planted, right? And that's a huge thing, the way that the chemicals are controlled and the pesticide, right? And there's a lot of manipulation there. And you look at just like the common herbicide or pesticide that is used in most of the things that everyone kind of has in most of their food is glyphosate. And you just look at the history that chemical has, and you follow the money trail, and you follow how that they were created as an organization, and what that chemical was created for, and all these different things, right? And one thing that's happened is the soil's been completely depleted, right? So almost no matter what the heck you eat today, whatever diet you're eating, you're probably going to be nutrient depleted because the soil is so depleted. Finding nutrient rich and soil is very, very critical, and it's really, really hard to find. Soil like in the middle of the rainforest, is very, very rare. And what's interesting is that is also like untouched, and no man needed to be there. Animals didn't need to, you didn't need to bring in cow manure or cow feces or blood from other animals or bones from other animals, which is in a lot of soil, right? So you didn't need, none of that stuff had to happen, and you could plant anything there and it's going to grow. It's so rich and so fertile and so ready to go, right? So that's a huge thing when it comes to regenerative kind of thing within the soil. And then it's totally like use something called green manure as an example, which the company that we work with uses a green manure, right? Which is from plants. Like if you have plants that are like, how did the plants grow in the rainforest? That many after they've dropped their leaves and their plants and their branches fall and all this sort of stuff, the nitrogen becomes part of the soil, and that's what they really need, is that replenishment of nitrogen that makes it so rich. But what do we do? What do we do? Like, say we have trees and they drop the leaves, get rid of all the leaves. You know what I mean? All the plants, they're dropping some of their leaves and they're breaking it. Let's get rid of it. Oh, it's time to harvest. Take it all. Collect all of it, suck it all in, take all of it, even the roots. It's like you're messing up, the cycle, right? So there's a few things there, right? It's total just misuse of the land over many, many years, misuse of the soil, improper farming techniques, even the monocrop. And the monocrop thing, oh my gosh, monocrop is so horrible. Yeah, you're right, it is. But you know what? 60% of all that monocrop, all of that is going to feed the animals to be killed anyways. You know what I mean? So that the most of the damage is coming because of what we do to feeding animals, right? So then the long term thing, what I want to say to add to the long term, the reality is there are a lot of vegans right now that have health issues, right? And what happens is they will, when they decide to try to, or they go back to whatever eating animal products and they make that decision, a lot of them make a video about it. And they make this video because they get a lot of attention. And it's a big attention grab, and it gets a lot of views, right? So what they do is they say, no, why I'm no longer vegan, right? And what happens is a lot of these people, they get more attention and people see it, like someone like a Michaela Peterson. And you can add up the stories and you can add it all up and you can say, look at this evidence. There's so many people that said they were vegan and they couldn't do it. This is definitive proof that veganism is not the answer, right? But like what you said, when you peel back the layers and you look at, like, what were they eating? What was their diet like? What were they getting their food? How were they getting their nutrition? What was their absorption like? What was their gut health? I feel like 99% of I've seen a lot of those, because I'm not the type of person that just stays on one side and doesn't look at the other side. I always look at the other side. I had one post on my Instagram. It was like from the left-leaning people in the US, the political left, commentator, and a right commentator, like literally like back-to-back videos. I look at both sides, and I really, really do. And when it comes to the vegan side, if I'm on the vegan side and I'm biased as a vegan, right, I look at the opposite side. What's the opposite side of veganism? The anti-vegans. Like, that's the opposite opposite. It's the ones that dedicate, and I'm not talking about someone that's like, I don't like vegans. They're annoying. Or I don't eat meat and I'm going to eat meat for the rest of my life. That's not an anti-vegan. An anti-vegan is someone that dedicates their time, dedicates their resources, dedicates their YouTube channel, their Instagram, their everything to say, I embody, I identify as an anti-vegan, right? They become, this thing. Those are the people that I listen to because they are the ones that actually have taken this ungodly amount of time to put all this research together that says this is proof. So when I look at that information and I have all these videos of all these ex-vegans, and I say ex-vegan because I think it's a philosophy. It's either you believe that you don't harm animals or you don't believe it. There is no X with that. You were ex plant-based, right? But anyways, when I look at that, 99% of them, because I have seen a lot, is gut health issues. Almost every single time. If they were to fix their gut, they have the proper absorption, it would most likely fix like 99% of those people, right? Their issues. But then there's a select few that I think are just extreme. And what I mean by extreme, they believe that there is a perfect way to eat and they need to find that perfect way to eat, and that perfect way to eat equals no pain, no suffering, perfect health, never having an issue. And that's not reality, right? Even if I were to eat, doing everything right, getting all the nutrition and everything I need, I could still get sick at some point. I mean, I knock on wood, I haven't in a long time, but I still, potentially could, right? Or some things could happen, or I could still break my leg or still get hit by a bus. I'm not immune to everything. There is no such thing as everything being perfect, right? But there are things that you could do, that are much better, that you can mitigate or reduce the risk, right? Of certain things. So anyways, that's some things that I wanted to add to that. Is there anything that you want to add, or we can finish off this clip?
I just wanted to cap on that, or like add on that really quickly too. Like I think one of the things, and I'm just gonna call it bluntly, right? And I was gonna swear, but I won't. I'll keep it because I really try not to swear off. But like people are just freaking lazy, right? Like seriously, people are lazy. And so, especially our generation, not a lot of people know how to cook. A lot of people like to order food, whether it's online or through Uber or what have you. And when it comes to being responsible for your own diet, people, I think, blindly eat animals because they think that they have, nutrition that we don't, have the ability to find or get or whatever else, right? Which is, again, lack of education and laziness. But how many people, when you think about the people that are ex-vegans, out of that grouping, how many of these people are adventurous in the kitchen? How many of these people are willing to learn new recipes and explore new cultural dishes, right? How many of these people are willing to get up and to exercise and to do stuff that is required to be a healthy person, and then they're just gonna claim that it was the diet. And a big part of that is probably, again, they're lazy, and so when they want to order food, they're not getting probably the spectrum of nutrients that they need to get because they're limited in options. Let's say, maybe I know like San Diego or California is a bit better than where I am, but in the suburbs here, there's not a lot of vegan food available for order, and if it is, it's French fries or something like that. And I think that's a big part of it, right? Is that these people are just freaking lazy, like full out. I don't like to be negative, but that's really what it is. It's just lazy people being just blobs, and then they're scapegoating it on veganism.
Yeah, I totally agree. I made a post recently about accountability. Like you're not ex-vegan, you're struggling from a food addiction, and you need to take accountability and responsibility for your food choices, and you need to fix your gut, remove parasites, remove glyphosate, so that you can take back control, because part of it is you're addicted and you don't have full control over your mind and your actions. So and it takes some education and some fixing and that sort of stuff. All right, so let's finish this up. Let's finish this last piece, because I know there's one more piece that I wanted to talk about. and then we'll wrap this thing up because it's been a good little reaction. Only 30-second video, but it's still really good. Okay, so this part, right? Pushing.
We could potentially be pushing a diet that's going to increase chronic disease. And at least I think we need more studies to prove that it doesn't. Wouldn't the right way to
Okay, good. So according to her, we're pushing this vegan diet, which isn't a diet, and plant-based diet, right? We're pushing this thing, and more chronic diseases are likely to ensue, and we need more studies, right? So one thing really quick on, well, I know you can we all of you discussed some of the studies, which is great, but there are so many studies, that talk about there's not vegan studies because it's not, that's a philosophy. There are plant-based eating studies, and there are plenty of them, right? For people that are eating plant-based, right? And so within those studies, right, and within that information, and within that realm of learning, and the realm of science, and the realm of those things, right, there are a few organizations like the American Dietetics Association, for example, which is the largest group of dietitians, nutritionists, the largest group, in the world, and they have collectively come together with the body of evidence and said that a plant-based diet, a well-planned, and that's key, right? And that is key, right? I could eat Oreos and soda and French fries, right? And eat fast food every day. That is not a well-planned plant-based diet, but a well-planned plant-based diet is suitable for all stages of life, including infancy, childhood, adulthood, adolescence, every single stage, elderly, right? Athleticism, every single part of your life, right? And this is not some biased vegan propaganda. These are the dietetic associations that you follow, right? They anyone can follow, that the government, can see and can follow, right? So that's one really, really quick thing. So if you're talking about we need more studies, maybe you need to look at more of the studies. Maybe you just haven't seen some of the studies. And then if you converse that to the study of eating only meat, right, and nothing else, the carnivore lion diet study, right, and you stack those up, there's like none that are peer reviewed. There's absolutely none, but there's one that they like to talk about. That's like a poll one that they did, a poll where they asked people how are they feeling after eating a certain amount of food, right? And it was not very scientific. There was no peer reviewed type of study, double blind trials, placebo, none of that kind of stuff that just tells you a study holds up. On top of that, when you look at studies, let's just really, really quick on studies, and then because I know that she talked about studies, right? So another thing, if you look at studies that talk about animal products, in general, a lot of them are funded by the very industries that are saying that maybe these things are good for you, right? And the reason why is, one, they have a lot more money than the most people. It cost a lot of money to do these studies. They're very expensive. So these industries have enough money to fund it, and they could do a bunch of studies, and they're not obligated to share their results. They could have 1,000 studies that all show terrible information about why they shouldn't be eating that food, but they only are obligated to publish what they want to. So they could publish the one that says what's good about them. And even if you break it down, there's one that says eggs are good for you. They compare eating eggs to a McMuffin sandwich at McDonald's, right? So that's the comparison. But what if you compare eggs to spirulina as an example? What would that study look like? You know what I mean? So anyways, those are just a couple things on the study part in the long term. And it comes to chronic disease as well, because that's included in all of that. Most of those studies, the reason why they did it was for chronic disease, from cancers to diabetes to heart disease to those are the major chronic. What other chronic diseases are there that are more prevalent than those? Those are like the top three, as far as what we're suffering with right now.
Yeah, and I mean, there's obviously a lack of education on her end, right? And I don't mean in general. She's a very well-educated lady, right? Of course, with her father being a university professor and clinical psychologist, she's very educated. But when it comes to this, she's obviously not. Because as you said, there are a myriad of studies. There are so many easily accessible studies that talk about plant-based diet and a vegan way of eating, if we can call it that. And one of the largest, if not, I believe the most comprehensive study of nutrition ever done, the China study, which was meant to actually showcase the benefits of increasing or introducing animal products into a diet, proved the opposite. And it is very detailed, it is very well documented. It was done on a huge group of people over an extensive period of time. It wasn't just done in China. They actually analyzed people in over 65 countries. Like we're talking about a very well documented nutrition study, most comprehensive one ever done, as I said. And it proved the opposite, that eating plant-based, in fact, was quite beneficial to human health. So, it's.
Can I say one thing about that study too?
Yeah.
One thing that's great about that study as well is because it was done a little while ago, not so long ago, but a time before chemicals were used so widely pervasive as they are now on the farming and the pesticides, and especially in China, especially in the rural parts of China, they're not using chemicals like that, definitely not at all. And so that also gives you a really good picture, before introduction of really heavy on the chemicals, what do plants do and what do animal products do. And that's another interesting thing. Let's just say really quickly off topic, let's say Dr. Greger, right? Dr. Greger, he has so many great studies and so much great information about plants and eating and all this sort of stuff, and just super intense research. I'm almost curious, how we need to change the research of some of these plant foods nowadays, and the animal foods, and almost distinguish between like ones that are organic and ones that are not organic and ones that have these chemicals. Because if you eat, let's say, soybeans, and corn and wheat that are laden with chemicals, right, and pesticides and glyphosate, and you compare that eating and how that impacts your body to cancer, diabetes, heart disease, versus one that has none of that stuff, those same foods, I think you're gonna have a huge difference in impact. And that's the same thing that some of these people on the meat argument are saying for the organic meat, which I think they have a fair point too, right? Like organic meat is probably healthier for you than non-organic meat, but what's healthier than that is plant-based. Organic plant-based is healthier than that, you know what I mean? And no animals are harmed, right? So I think that that is something that is going to be really interesting as more studies come out in the day and age. And I think that's actually going to hurt in a way the vegan movement with some of the studies, because they're going to have studies with chemicals, or they're going to study really processed foods and all these sort of things, and then say, yep, see those processed foods, you know what I mean? That's why you can't be vegan. It's like, well, you totally be vegan without eating any of that stuff at all. You know what I mean? Like it's totally fine.
Yeah, I think it's important for any of us to analyze, in Michaela's case, let's say, right, she switches over to this all beef diet and doesn't have immune responses. Well, what was she eating before? Was she eating entirely organic before? And we don't have these answers, of course. I'm just exploring the thinking. Unless she was eating completely organic, right, and avoiding all the pesticides and other potential triggers for the immune system, one couldn't even really draw a comparison, right, fairly, and say, like, is there anything different, before and now, in terms of the which food is triggering it, as opposed to just, we know that we've eliminated pesticides and chemicals, right? And then again, it's so baffling that the knowledge base out there is lacking so much that she and many other people think that nutrition is supposed to be derived from the animals, or that's the best source, or that there'd be some lack of nutritional value or nutritional resources outside of meat. It's just absurd. The lack of awareness, right, and connectedness to where actually all nutrition on the planet comes from, right? And then worrying that that source of nutrition is going to be lacking for us. So yeah, just in terms of the studies being done on it, there's so many out there. There's so much information out there, and she's obviously misinformed. But also just missing some base knowledge, right? Just about health in general, and that concern that a vegan diet will lead to long-term illness. Improper diet will lead to long-term illness, right? But eating
Yeah.
plants.
I think it'd be more beneficial too. She really wants to get to the root cause. If she's really at a search for this, you know what I mean? Beyond looking for herself, she wants to find the answers herself and find the search for this herself. You know what I mean? Perfect. You have, let's say, Cosmic Skeptic, who's still new. Like, he hasn't been doing this for very long. You know what I mean? Like, he's just well spoken, right? And has some information. But really quick, he has the ethical side. That's fine. That's totally great.
Exactly.
Focus on that. That's the conversation. The conversation has nothing to do with health. Then bring on someone who's an expert in health that is also vegan, that is also ethical, right? They have an ethical mindset about not eating animals on top of the nutrition and expertise knowledge, right? So now you have another side, right? And let's say you want to talk about the environment. Do the same thing. Bring on someone to your show, right, who's an absolute expert, on the environment, had impacts in the environment, from a animal agriculture standpoint, and from someone that doesn't eat animals, right? Now you have an incredible picture to paint from 3 different sides. And now you have this interesting thing where you're not just one-sided, it's one track, because you could easily say, let's say you focus on just the ethical part of veganism, right? Only the ethical part of veganism, right? And you don't cover, let's say health or environment as an example, right? You're going to be very only one-sided on that, and you could easily poke holes in it. Okay, well, yeah, you know what? I understand, it's wrong to eat animals, but I need it for my health, right? Boom, argument over, debunked, right? The ethical stance of veganism is debunked because you have health. But now you stop that for a minute and you say, now you double, you have this ethical stance and you have this health stance. Now you have these 2 really, really powerful reasons and strong information, right? I think that's what's happened to a lot of us. We've seen so much information approve us, and that's why we are exactly why we are and why we believe what we believe, because we've seen so much information to prove to us, that why we make this decision, right? And then so that would be beneficial for her, right? For Cosmic Skeptic, for him, for him to be beneficial if he really wants to help people go vegan. And I think the same thing for Earthling Ed, Joey Carbstrong does it a little bit. Sometimes I've seen him talk about health sometimes and try to be healthy and focus and fitness a little bit. Seen him having a greens juice on a live talking about the power of greens. I've seen that from Joey Carbstrong. I know his message isn't all about that. It's mostly animals, which is fine. I wouldn't change anything about Joey. But let's say Earthling Ed is an example, and Cosmic Skeptic, I'll put them in this similar category as like this philosophy type of people, right? And they're great and I love them. But what I would add to them is learn about the nutrition more. Learn more about it. Learn all these different ways that you can eat. Learn about the organic. Learn about some of the chronic diseases. Learn about the regenerative farming, because people are talking about it. People are asking about it. You need to learn about it so that you can have, like you remember a long time ago when Earthling had his his thing on YouTube where it's like debunking all these different arguments. You know what I mean? There was a time where he did that because those were the arguments, but they change over time. I think they have changed. Like, it's almost like there's all these different things, that are like these different, there's some of the same ones. Yeah. The protein and plants feel pain and religion. And some of those are still there, right? For people that never thought about it. But then there's like the people that have thought about it deeper than those ones. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they have a whole different set of things and reasons why they think they have to eat animals, and I think it would be wise of both of them, to study this part and incorporate it into some of what they do, for these situations. And when it comes out, I don't think it has to overtake, like, now you have to change your whole channel to be about health. I don't think it has to be about that, but I think that it should be in your knowledge and talked about, and have it at least so people can debunk it, because people are looking to some of these. They're going to probably look to Earthling Ed versus me for advice on some of these solutions, most likely just because of the follow and the influence and his experience and helping people with going vegan and stuff like that, because that's like the main thing that he does. And so yeah, that's what I would say. And from a men's health standpoint, I know we didn't talk about that too much. I think that this was, I mean, those are both people that you're gonna be talking to. And Earthling Ed and Cosmic Skeptic are both men, and they're gonna have huge impacts on their followers and the people that they're talking to them, and they're gonna lead them, and they're gonna ask you, what do I eat? What do I eat? What do I eat? They're gonna ask you that all the time. What do I eat? And what are you gonna tell them? You're gonna tell them go eat the Oreos because it's vegan. You're gonna tell them go eat the Beyond Burgers because it's vegan. Go search Happy Cow and just eat out every day. Is that the advice that you're gonna tell them? You know, that's good in some situations, you know what I mean? But is that the best that we can do? You know what I mean? I know Joey does a lot of Challenge 22 as an example, you know what I mean? And I know they do focus on a lot of plant-based, and I think that's a good tool for sure, you know what I mean? For helping people. I think that's done well. But yeah, those are just some things that I would say when it comes to health. And you can make a huge impact, and just know that we do not have to harm animals if we want to be healthy and we want to thrive. And 98% of people that are eating it, I mean, 98% of people or so are eating animal products. And if you look at the entire Western culture, and you look at what we're eating, the standard American diet, right? There's no way in the world that standard American diet, from all that fast food and all that processed food as well, is good for people and is doing good. And I personally think that eating like that is what led me to disease. You know, I eating the standard American diet, I was a total standard American diet eater, and I think that directly led me to disease. And I have all the proof in my corner, you know, from my truth and my experience. You know, I'm saying I'm done, you know, eating the standard American diet, and I've eaten it a completely different way, and I don't have those autoimmune diseases. So you have a Michaela Peterson we talked about last week. We talked about Mr. Beast and his autoimmune diseases, right? And they have huge influence, right? There's so many people out there that are struggling. They might not even know that they have an autoimmune disease, and they're having the symptoms and the feelings of it in the inside, and it's just totally misdiagnosed. And it can be avoided, and it can be reached out. Please reach out to us. You know, either one of us can definitely help you. We're going to post this on Facebook as well. It's going to, of course, be on YouTube. I'm going to have the original video down below for description. Like and subscribe if you're watching this video on YouTube. And I'll also have more information in the description if you want to learn more, just to help your health out as well. Is there anything that you want to add, Mike? And thank you for joining as always.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You know, and your technological abilities in hosting these calls and syncing up our videos and doing all the stuff that is outside of my wheelhouse. But yeah, no, I think you've summarized it quite well. I think Michaela is a very smart and educated young woman, and I think that, you know, there's a possibility she specifically chose her, you know, her counterpart with some strategy there, and full well knew that they were almost like they were sort of speaking different. You know, they were both singing different melodies up on stage together, and he was talking about sort of the ethics behind it, and she was talking about the health behind it. It wasn't a directly lined up back and forth, and I think it's possible she did that with some intent, because, you know, her background and her lack of knowledge would make it very hard to go up against someone who did have the health, you know, background. A health heavyweight would have had her tapping out of the ring pretty quickly in that debate. So, yeah, be your own advocate. You know, to those out there listening, be your own advocate. In a sense, you know, in a loose sense, be your own doctor. Like, really get out there and research and learn about what's going on with your body, right? What could be related to what's going on with your body. And then don't just attribute it to either removing or adding one specific food, but rather try and understand what's going on. And please, as Kevin said, reach out for information, reach out to talk to us, reach out about gut health, reach out about suggestions and ideas and input for our Men's Health Monday calls, which we will be doing every week. You know, every Monday night we're getting together and talking about things that matter to men and their health. So please feel free to give us some inspiration, some input, some criticism, some feedback, or whatever is on your mind. And yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks so much again, Kev. I appreciate your time, and it's always a blast sitting down and carving out some space to talk about this stuff with you.
Absolutely. This was great. And thank you so much for your time. And we'll see you next week. Same time, 5:30 Pacific time, 8:30 Eastern time.